Hi, Lawrence. How are you doing?
Hey Giorgio, I'm really good to see you. It's been a while since I'm glad to be back.
Nice to meet you again. Yes, you've probably been one of my first interviewed guests. It was probably at the beginning of my journey on YouTube. It's been 4.5 years that I'm here, probably like 4 years that we met since we met first time. And how is life? What happened in the last 3, 4 years?
Uh yeah, I mean, I've continued to build more to that and it's continued to do its thing and building a readership and it's grown in that sense. And yeah, I just kind of been following my curiosity, continuing to write, post, and meet people. And now I have a book coming out, and
Awesome,
that's kind of
awesome.
where we're at
I
right now.
Yes, 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 yes. I can show our people who are following, and we have a new book called The Inner Compass that's gonna be public on it's
On
not launched
July
yet
8th.
on July 8th. So yeah, we are recording in the end of June, but probably this interview is gonna be live right before, right after the book launch. So the inner compass. Before talking about the book, I have a few questions for you.
Mhm.
Uh, how how are you still teaching the course on storytelling?
Yeah, I am. I'm still teaching. Um, by the way, Giorgio, I have to
Yeah,
stop right now. I don't want to, but my
sure.
video is doing this crazy flashing thing. Like, do you see that
I
on
can
your end?
see. I can see that you froze.
Yeah.
Maybe we can restart so the
Yeah,
people will
yeah. It
see.
was towards the beginning, and I was like, I gotta say something because I feel like I'm gonna have a seizure by the end of the 2 hour or however long we're gonna chat for. So,
Yeah. So again, hi Lawrence. Welcome back on my channel. We probably met the first time was probably 4 years ago. You were one of my first guests. How is life?
life is good. Over the last kind of 3 years so since I've last talked to you, I've continued to be writing, building the blog, getting my stuff out there, and just connecting with a lot of interesting people such as yourself. And now I have a book coming out.
The book, which is called, here we go, The Inner Compass, which is coming out on July 8th.
Yes.
Yes, super, The Inner Compass. And we are here tonight to discuss about the book and something more. So before we jump in the book, how's your online business doing in general? Are you still teaching the class on storytelling?
Yes, yeah, I'm still teaching. I'm still teaching thinking in stories. And what's been great about that course is that people from all different kinds of backgrounds have taken it. So at first, I thought it was just going to be writers because that's what I do. And lo and behold, there's been YouTubers that have taken the course, just even fiction writers, and a lot of different people across all backgrounds. And I guess I kind of underestimated how writing really finds its way through every creative discipline and especially storytelling. So
I
I
would also
think,
expect somebody from marketing.
well, no, there are people in marketing there as well. I think, yeah, I think that the positioning of storytelling kind of makes it a little different from, I guess, just writing, even though writing is the delivery mechanism. Storytelling really finds its way through all of it, right?
Sure, sure, sure. Totally. So, what is the book about?
Mm. So the book fundamentally is a call for self-understanding and this ability to know oneself in the face of a world that makes it really difficult to do so. And I think really the proposition here is that knowing yourself can sound like this really woo-woo kind of mystical concept rooted in spirituality. And that's actually not the lean or the angle that I tend to gravitate towards. My angle is not that, but also not the other side, which is completely scientific and based in rooted in neuroscience and all that stuff. So I kind of like to find the middle path and to essentially explain what I feel is the core of a lot of people's suffering. And the interesting thing about the modern world, and this continues to be the case, is that physically we are very comfortable. If we're sitting in a nice air conditioned room, or we don't really have to worry about where our food will come from, if we have a roof over our head. But like in countries like South Korea, for example, increasing suicide rates. You're seeing that throughout the world, high levels of
Yeah,
anxiety, and people are suffering. So there is this interesting chasm between physical comfort and mental
mental
distress.
discomfort. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the gap really there comes from the fact that we feel so conditioned to feel certain ways or to do certain things at the expense of really trying to understand who we are better. Because if we take the time to do that, so instead of directing our attention outward so much and focusing more in the internal world and navigating that and understanding that, then my theory here is that suffering really has the capacity to dissolve.
Well, you've been already through a lot of the questions I have for you, because we are gonna ask you questions about every single page of the book. I had the pleasure of being able to read it before it came out, because you were so generous that you gave it to me. I've run through half of the book because I had not enough time, but having you summarize all the main points of the first 6 or 7 chapters has been amazing so far. Let's move into it. Before moving into the book, I want to ask you things about the process of writing a book. So, why did you write this book? So, what made you think that blog posts are not enough? I want to write a book. Why?
So I think when it comes to writing a book, there are two things. One, when you think about a reader of a book, there's this kind of attentional and fiscal buy-in from the reader, right? The reader is going to presumably pay for the book, and they are going to sit down with the book and draw their attention. There's something about the format that really encourages that. So I knew that this was a topic that I've talked about kind of in different ways, right? Like my blog post serves as different islands of this whole notion of knowing yourself and understanding yourself. And I wanted to find that narrative that would basically make a reader feel like their attention was worth it to sit down with it and even buy the book. And the second really is that there's a book carries some sort of cultural significance where if you feel like you have some topic that you want to elaborate on and build a narrative around, you as an author will put more of your own attention into it. So when I write blog posts, I mean, I've written blog posts that have taken 100 hours to do.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I know we've talked
I
about
think
some of them.
some of your blog posts are maybe longer than the book.
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
if you measure by number of words or something, but I
Yeah.
can point out to 2 or 3 blog posts. Maybe if you remove the images, it's longer than the book.
Yeah, I mean, some blog posts may be longer than the inner compass. And I think one thing that I wanted to do with this book, though, was that I wanted to make it short. I In fact, that's the very first sentence of the
That's the
book is,
beginning of the book. Yes.
yeah, it's like, "As a service to your attention, this book is short." And in kind of paradoxically, that made me focus my attention more on this particular topic because I wanted the brevity of it to speak louder than its verbosity, right? So, I really wanted that element to shine through, and this topic especially is because I actually wrote this was not when I was in a quite steep period of doubt myself about what exactly um where exactly is my creative career going? Where do I want it to be? Um, am I going to is this really gonna be something that I'm gonna continue doing for X, Y, Z amount of years? And a lot of it I figured was that, like yourself, right? Like you've grown your
Oh,
channel
come
into
on.
something quite
Yes.
substantive. But then when you compare it to like when you were just starting out, I'm sure the way in which you approach the craft has changed a lot, right?
Oh,
And
yes, totally. Now it's much more industrialized, and
mhm,
of course, it's less interesting to me at the moment. I see this job now more as I have a company with also 3 people that works with me, and yes, the craft, the art the artistic side of it it's been, it needs a redefinition, let's say, something like that. But yeah.
Well, I'm curious, what do you mean by it's not as interesting?
I was more pushed by curiosity at the beginning of this journey, and I was more into personal finance and a bit of career in tech. And a smaller amount of time was devoted to all the big questions of life. Now things are changing. I'm not that much interested in personal finance anymore. My editor, I have two editors and one channel manager that says, "Hey, we should put an advertisement for a company, but we have no video where to put the advertisement on because you're not talking about personal finance anymore." Oh,
Mm.
right, I'm right. These days, I'm not talking about that anymore. So my interests are changing, and I need to adapt with that. I need to react. Then there is some baseline of external interest, like sponsors that do want me to keep talking about certain topics. So as you see, conditioning, external forces. So the first chapters of your book, like they hit strong on me. So we're gonna discuss step by step everything.
Yeah, so
Since I want to write a book, I'm also
mm,
interested in the process. These days, I'm really drained toward the impact of artificial intelligence and on almost the negative impacts of AI on critical thinking, on the ability to maintain attention focused, or something like this. I know people are not reading books anymore, so sometimes I tell myself, I'm writing a book, who's going to read it? And second, with AI around, who's going to need a non-fiction book when they can ask questions to the ChatGPT? Have you ever asked yourself these questions?
yeah, I've asked myself this question, and I think this is where the personality of the person you're interacting with is so important because I mean it's kind of akin to food. It's like we can go around and just eat Soylent all day, right? Like if the purpose of food is just to sustain ourselves,
Nutrition, yeah.
yeah, nutrition or just find like, whatever will allow us to subsist, and that will be fine. But food means so many different things to us, right? It's a way of bonding with people. It's a way of connecting to a specific culture. It's a way to decompress. I mean, there's many different functions that we assign to food outside of the physical sustenance. I think the same thing applies to books or media, right? It's like, especially nonfiction. Yeah, these days, like information is, it's there. It's not valuable. You could obtain knowledge through a simple prompt, but when you want information delivered in a certain context with a certain wrapper, and that wrapper is one's personality and perspective, then you find it intriguing and interesting. And you want to hear that information delivered through that perspective and hear it in the form of a story.
Sure. Which I translate this into, I like the person, I will buy the book from this person because I'm a fan. It's which is okay. I mean, we have a large audience, and that's fine. I find it, I don't know, hard to reach somebody outside of our sphere of influence. But anyway, that's still not a huge deal because, yeah.
Well, so I know. Go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No, yeah, yeah, sure. Please, you go ahead.
No, no. It's just been a while, so I want to hear everything from your end too.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
no.
I'm in the process. I want to write books. I also wanted to write a course, but mine was more like and how to uh, interact with your personal finance from saving to investing to earning more to fire and everything about personal finance. But my ideal book would have been more like a manual, and there's not much space for manuals anymore. So that was my first problem with writing a book. Yeah, second is that I'm getting less interested in personal finance. I'm exploring other topics like self-actualization, for example. I want to know how to live the best life. I'm reading Flow at the moment. I don't know if you read it, the
Mm-hmm.
book Flow,
Yeah.
and it's really enlightening. I also made a couple of connection between your book and Flow, so I'm gonna ask you some questions about that.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, so I'm always uh, curious of what pushes people to write books in these days, where all the stats they say that nobody reads anymore, essentially, or the book reading is in decline.
I think even though it's in decline, there is something powerful about yourself writing a book. And so, for example, I mean, we could use what you just said there as a case study for my answer. So you said that you may want to write a personal finance manual of sorts, right? Of course, but in the Mr. Rip way, like that. It's
Yeah,
not
sure,
going
with
to
my
be.
voice.
Yeah, it's gonna be your voice. You're gonna use your stories. It's like you do these monthly updates where you share your financial progress. And it's like I don't think people watch it just because they want to see the numbers. They watch it because of how you explain it, walk through it, the
Sure,
story,
sure,
right?
sure.
So at the same time though, you're like, I'm not really interested in personal finance as much anymore, but like this is the book I feel like I should write, kind of. So here's a way I like to think about book writing is
My
that
compass is a bit.
it's a bit wonky.
Yes.
And a big thing is that like we rely so much on our expertise to define what we should write about, right? So we look at this road of expertise, and then in my case too, when I was thinking about writing a book, I was like, oh, I need to write a book about money because my money posts have been very
Your
popular.
your
Uh,
money posts more than one. They've been probably the best one on your blog, I think. Well, then
Thank
you
you.
started you had a sequence on philosophy, like the one about Socrates, or other posts about philosophy. I love that as
Mm.
well. I mean, yeah, we.
Yeah. So, like you said, the money post, you've enjoyed, we've talked about it, and it's also been shared by many. And so I was like, well, my expertise in terms of what it feels like it's being drawn to, or what I feel like I have in-depth knowledge that resonates is money. And as I started writing that book, so I first started with that,
Okay.
but so it was kind of around this framing of the nothingness of money. And this is based on an article that I wrote, which became one of the most popular things I've ever written. And the general premise is that, hey, we're all going to die. How do we live our lives so that that clarity that we all tend to hear about when you reach the end of life is that, money in the end doesn't really mean much. Like, how do you retain that clarity, but take it through the past, your current position, right?
You sure that is the nothingness of money and not money is the megaphone of identity? I think it's that one.
Well, the nothingness of money actually was way more popular than that, like
Okay,
multiples
wow.
more.
I wouldn't expect that. Okay. But
Yeah,
I
and
mean, if I were your editor or your publisher, I would say, no, well, your expertise is not money. Your expertise is really um, the inner compass. When I saw your book, I thought, okay, that's the perfect book that Lawrence would write, because you added a layer of self-examination on every blog post you wrote. It's always about you looking inside. So not about money, not about the hedonistic treadmill of the travel is no cure for the mind, something like this. And so I would have not said that you were going to write a book about money.
so
But anyway,
that's the
I'm happy
tension.
that you. Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
great.
that was the tension when I was starting to write this is that like I you saw something that I didn't at that time where I was like, well, I just got to write about money and do that, and I just wasn't getting anywhere with it at the time. And a lot of it was like, well, I'm not really in this kind of nothingness of money vibe. I'm in the wealth accumulation phase, all that stuff. So I hit pause on that. This was about a year and a half ago, and this is where I felt that I was doing something I should do. And the doubt that came with that, and also like, well, if this is what I'm supposed to do and I'm not doing it, then what do I do next? And
Oh,
The-
You are. Those are the, these are. This is the question I'm asking myself because I'm a kind of an impasse. Like it's 4.5 years that I'm on YouTube. But before it was like 5 years on the blog, and I'm kind of. I'm asking myself, I want to change something, but that's what I'm supposed to do, and I'm good at, and it's making money. What should I do? What else should I do? So I mean, I'm asking this exact question.
yeah. And that question, if you're in that phase right now, is something important to think about because it's kind of pointing you to what I feel like is the other side, the intersection. So you have expertise, which is like everything that you know and the knowledge about what works, what doesn't, and then inspiration. Inspiration. It's like at this point in time, what draws you the most? And I think that this is something that people kind of forget about. They just think like, "Oh, I the expertise is what I should do," whereas the inspiration is kind of what you must do. And you have to kind of hit that central point. And at that time, I realized that, "Oh, wow. A lot of my tension I'm experiencing now is kind of the impasse you're at right now." And I feel like the solution really is to kind of go inward a bit instead of focusing so
Hmm.
much on what I need to put out in the world and what I
Hmm.
need to create and share and get all the views or whatever. It's like, what if I just dedicated a portion of my time right now to really delving deeper into this concept of knowing myself? Because I feel like there'd be something special there, and to materialize that through a book. So it was really following the inner compass in the sense of actually creating this book itself, because I felt like it had something important. I had something important to tell myself as a result of doing this. So I ended up like canceling the course for that I was supposed to do.
Okay.
So there are, these kind of business opportunities that I know that if I don't do it, then, there would be a stall there. And I remember telling my wife, I was like, I don't know if I'm being stupid with this. Like I'm gonna write this book and I don't know what's gonna happen with it. I don't know if anyone's gonna read it, but I just feel so called to do this right now. And if anything, that was also kind of why I made it a short book too. Like there were other
So
constraints.
let's be quick. So I don't get back on the old track if it doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
that's another fear of mine. Like my machine is running and it's doing okay financially. That's okay. If I want to take a turn, I need to put something on hold, and that things might not come back. Like I have sponsor deals and whatnot. So I understand all your fears and the process you jumped on for this. Maybe in 6 months, I will tell you, hey, I've done the same. You actually have a blog post about this, like on jumping on the cliff. What was the name of it?
the day you decided to take
Taking
the
the
leap.
leap. Yeah, take the leap. Yes, yes, yes. You
Yeah.
should reread it. Because that's something cyclical. I quit Google 5 years ago, and to build this, that's growing enough. I'm almost making as much money I was making at Google now, but now I might need to take another leap. Another leap.
Mm. So, do you
Yeah.
think the leap there is because the certainty that you have right now feels like it's too certain in a sense, or is
Um, well, I love the metaphor of the hiking you have on chapter 5 or 6. I don't remember. What happened the 100th time you go to the same, what's it called, the same fork. No, I think I would take the leap tomorrow if I had something to land on. Like until 5 years ago, I've done a lot of things, and I always had this sentiment like I'm doing X because I'm good at X, but I want to do Y, Z, and W. I always had a list of things I want to do instead of doing what I was doing. Now that I do essentially whatever I want and I transformed all my hobbies into the channel, there's nothing outside the channel. So there's nothing, oh, well, I want to take a break from this YouTube thing and do what? Uh, there's missing the other side of the mount, the other side of the mountain to jump to. So that's something weird because I I essentially now work much more. I work all the time. at least mentally, everything I do, how can I write about this? How can I tell this to my audience? Or this could be filmed and making a short video about me training in the gym. So everything becomes content. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit consumed by the everything is content mindset. That's yeah. That's becoming a therapy session for me. Thank you. Send me the bill after.
No, I mean, I think it's fascinating because this does fit with the general theme we're talking about. And like when you are in a space where if everything feels like content, I do feel like that's where a book also shines. Not in the form of what you're delivering to the reader, but also for what you're creating yourself. Like people will rarely call a book a content. There is
Sure, sure,
and that's
sure.
interesting it's not just terminology. There is a reason I think why people don't call it that. And I think it's because there is an inherent assumption that it took a lot of like internal work, right? Just like delving in, like presumably you're not doing this with the team. It's just you looking
Mm.
at a screen, oscillating between creative excitement and doubt, like as you're writing. And when someone sees this artifact in the form of a book, it's like, okay, I know this person
It's a
really put
proof
the
of
best of him
work.
or herself.
Yes, yes. Like, yeah, yeah, makes sense. In another post of yours, one of that I like the most, I don't remember the title, but it's like how's it called? Like the creativity, something, the things that comes in, things that get out, the, I don't know how
Oh,
can I
the
put it.
ratio.
Release ratio. Yes, I think that when you produce more content for like a YouTube channel, you kind of push out everything you have. If you want to write a book, you need to reduce the ratio a bit and then accumulate knowledge, whatnot, and then produce something which has more value. So that's another like sign that I also need to write my book. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
I would
But
think we would love to see that.
yeah, me too. Me too. I also fear that with time, my capacity of being more focused is deteriorating a bit.
Mm.
But that's another topic. I'm pretty sure that if I can focus like 4 hours per day, but this job requires a lot of interaction with email and comments and whatnot. Anyway, so we already, I mean, a few questions that we already kind of answered. I wanted to ask you, how did the process of writing a book differ from creating a blog post? But I assume you already answered to that. You have anything to add?
Yeah, I think when it comes to writing a book too, you have presumably you'll have chapters, right? And each chapter you are basically sharing a certain piece of information wrapped in a story that is communicating a particular point. But when it came to this book, what I was trying to do was like I wanted to have each chapter flow into the next, and also if there is a particular question that the reader may have about the chapter, like, oh, I don't quite agree with this, then I would try to address
You
it in
try
the
to
next chapter.
anticipate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So whereas with the blog post, there's kind of less room for too much going back and forth across the spectrum. It's like you have a certain theme, you have a point you want to make, and then that's it. Whereas, for example, in this book, I have a chapter about following your intuition, and then as people read it, they might be like, "Wait, but what if your intuition sucks, bro? Like, if it sucks, you shouldn't follow it." And then so in that chapter, I end with, "Well, what if you're asking yourself that question? Let's explore that question in the next chapter so we could have a more
Yeah,
well-rounded view of this."
you did that with the intuition. Now we're going to go there soon. One sentence that's actually in the first or second page that hit me soon, like oh holy shit. You said, here's the thing. Throughout most of my youth and early adulthood, I believed that external achievements would alleviate my inner turmoils. If I wasn't at peace, I figured that there was some ambition I need to actualize or some milestone I had to reach to justify a period of ease. That kind of, I'm in that phase. I cannot feel like I can relax or justify taking a break if I hadn't reached some milestone, and it's never enough. How can you how to get out of from this sensation?
It's certainly not easy, and it's certainly something where you have to pay attention to what you're paying attention to. um, and
It's a metacognition.
it definitely is. And when you're working on a specific project, it's really hard to divorce a project's outcome with the feeling you have while working on it, right? There's always some goal that you attach to the moment you start working on something. Now, the question really is like, what is the goal that you're paying attention to for that given project, whatever it may be? I think this is kind of the danger with like the content wheel, for example, is that every piece of content has a particular goal, which is to outperform the past one or to see what exactly the numbers may be or so forth. Whereas I think like if you're paying attention to the fact that you just want to put something that you feel like is good out in the world, however you may want to define that, and you're using your own skills. Like you're using the best of your abilities to actualize that, but you're able to just be content with what you've created and do your best to get it out. But you can try to at least direct the attention somewhere else. And I think that's difficult to do, especially when you're creating all the time. Like you're saying, your mind is on 24/7.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that would be great if life was single-threaded, like you are working on one project. I'm usually on 20 things at the same time, so that's a bit harder.
But do all 20 things have a set objective, something that some milestone that needs to be crossed in order for you to feel satisfied?
I don't know. How do you define milestone in answering to emails or dealing with your I would say coworker, but I can say collaborator or employees, or dealing with the audience, like answering to comments. It's hard to define milestones. Uh, Essentially, probably delegating could be a solution, but I'm not good at that.
Yeah. I mean, with all those things you describe, right? Like, I don't think a feeling of ease is what exactly you're after. It's like the moment you open up your inbox, you're not like, I just want to feel at ease. And there is already this notion of, all right, I got to get through these, get this done so I could move on or to go on to the next thing to also not feel at ease and get it done to go on to the
And
next thing.
you know that in 3 hours your inbox will still have another 10 email.
Right, right. So there is like this continuous refilling of sorts. And I think, we haven't really evolved to feel at ease and
That's a good point.
happy, right?
That's a good point.
And I don't think that happiness and complete ease and peace is really what we're after. It's like paradoxically, if you chase peace, that's you're not at peace. And what I think we really want is what texture of challenge do you feel like is worthwhile? What is worthwhile on its own? And you know, that's why like a lot of people like after they if they build teams or something, they're like, oh, someone else is checking my email because like that's not a challenge I feel is worthwhile anymore. Whereas for me, like I really just want to do things myself. I like doing things myself, and I find that challenge worthwhile, even though the emailing may not be the funnest of things to do. There is a sense of, oh, I get to interact with readers and chat with them. Like not everyone's going to think that way. It's everyone has their own kind of challenge they feel is worthwhile. Some people say like, yeah, you got to devote all your attention to just creating things because that's where like your leverage is and stuff like that.
But that's just a chimera. That's not possible.
It's and nor do you necessarily. I don't think that's necessarily something we want. It's like is in the end what you want to be completely removed from the
No,
people that
no,
enjoy your stuff, and they have to go through
no, no, no.
some other bottleneck to get to you. Like, it reminds me of people that get so rich that in the end they build like a bunker around their home and and cement walls so people can't get in and stuff. It's
That's a nice
interesting.
analogy. Yeah.
And so that's not really like, I want to still be immersed in like the people that enjoy my work or the people that I get to interact with. I think that there's something really beautiful about that fundamentally. So I think for me, those kinds of things are also nice because there's no inherent milestone. Because like when you ask yourself, yeah, what is the
Mm,
milestone of these emails? Like there is none, which is to me what makes it more worthwhile to interact with people in that way.
that's a
Um,
nice point of view. Thanks, thanks, thanks. That's a nice way to reinterpret what I. Well, it's actually at the core of the book, no? Choose how to interpret facts and reality. You mention a recurring theme in your book is knowledge versus understanding. Okay, could you elaborate on the difference between knowledge and understanding?
and knowledge is taught through information, and understanding is taught through experience. I think if I were to put it succinctly, it would be that. And knowledge really, we consider that to be the most valuable thing. Knowledge of the world, knowledge of self, what have you. And what I believe is that any piece of knowledge, no matter how great it is, how amazing it is, how timeless it is ultimately meaningless unless it hasn't been embodied through real world experience. Now, the knowledge could help direct your attention to where you want to build that experience, right? It's like, presumably, you saw some people on YouTube and you were like, hey, I want to give myself a shot at that. But if you never had knowledge of what YouTube entailed and all that, you wouldn't have this experience to build it out. Same thing for me in writing. So, knowledge helps to direct where your compass could go. But the only way it'll have any bearing on your life is if you actually walk towards it through experience. And wisdom really is about that. It is contextualizing knowledge and understand how that comes out in the form of understanding.
So you start the first chapter of the book starts with depression. Actually, I think it's a nice description of depression. Like you say, actual quoting you, depression isn't feeling down when things are going badly. It's feeling down even when things are going well. Why did you decide to start from depression?
Yeah, it's something I haven't really talked much about, but yeah, there was a period in my 20s where I was very depressed. Um Concerningly depressed. And
Oh, oh wow.
yeah, and it was, and like I say in the book, it's not like I was completely destitute. It's not like I had no family. It's not like I didn't have any of these things. It was just this feeling of, yeah, things are miserable. Um, and I wanted to start with that because I wanted to just elaborate on how things can be going all right in your life, and yet everything could be spiraling out of control. And I know this is not a situation that's just for me. I know many, many people that are in this situation or have been in it. Maybe not to the same extent that I was,
Yes, I think
but
it's a spectrum.
it's
I
a
also feel
spectrum.
like externally, my life should be like one of the best lives ever. I have an amazing family. I have a lot of money. I do what I want. So, except from the outside, I should be the happiest person in the world. But sometimes, I mean, I don't think I'm depressed, but I struggle a lot with. Is this what I should do in my life? Is this what I want to do in my life?
Yeah.
Is why am I not happier? So I it resonated. I mean, your story resonated a lot with me. So
Yeah.
what, if I can ask, why do you think? I mean, why did you feel depressed back then? You were doing a job. You were working at a job that you didn't like, or what was not in line with your inner compass?
So I really think there are three things that if they are satisfied, no matter what you get wrong in life, like you'll have a pretty cool life. So one is where you live, the second is what you work on, and the third is who you're with. I didn't have any of those things then. So I was living in a place that I frankly detested. It was not. So it was like a suburb area, but it wasn't. Just didn't align with what I wanted. The second is what I was working on. I was in finance. Not to knock finance for those of you that are in the space, but it just wasn't for me. I always knew that I wanted to do something more quote unquote creative. Um, and the third was, yeah, I didn't have a partner or anything like that. So I was alone a lot of the time in this area that was pretty far from LA, which is where most of my friends were. So all that combined to make me feel like, yeah, I have what I need. I have money. I have a space to live in. But the fact that I couldn't seem to get out of this space, this rut. I felt like I didn't in a weird way, I felt like I didn't have options because I didn't even know where to look. So, I think that's the thing too, is that when you feel like you don't even know where you could look next, where you might even want to draw your attention to next, I think that's when you're in a pretty dark place. Like, you know, for example, even in the
You are
course of our
defining
conversation.
my life now. No, well, I'm with person I love. I'm in a place I like. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and be happy about it. But there is something, small bricks that can be fixed. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to my own depression at that time too, I didn't I think I was also too focused on what I felt like I should be doing with my life. It's like, why am I in this situation? I could be doing more. And if there is truth to that, that's fine, but I don't think it was coming out of my own volition. I think I was seeing, all right, well, based upon what the norms of society should say, I should be in this position, or oh, based upon this person I used to know, I should be in that position. And I was also going against what I felt like I wanted to do, which is something more creative, but I had no idea where I wanted to start. And I think all those things compounded to feel that way. Whereas if I knew that, like, oh, maybe making music may be a potential avenue, even if it didn't have any particular career leanings,
Okay.
just feeling like it's something that could be deserving of my curiosity and attention, that would go a long way, which I talk about later on. But I didn't have that when I was in the thick
So
of it.
okay, you had a generic like pull toward creativity, but without a specific surface for expressing your creativity. If I understand correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't exactly know how I what should go on the canvas. I just knew that there was some sort of canvas, and I was just sitting there.
Then what happened? Was there a moment of revelation?
Yeah. So it's always I always feel a little touched when I talk about this, but it's one of the kindest things someone has done for me. My friend, who's still a good friend to this day, he knew I was in a bad spot, and he knew that like I was interested in music because I like to see him DJ and stuff like that. And he had he used to go to this DJ school, and then he discovered that they had beat making classes where you could make music and teach how to make music. So what he did was, on my birthday, he just sent me an email saying, "Hey, I got you these classes." So he
Oh
didn't even
wow!
tell me if he's gonna get or do I want to take it or not. He just said, "Hey, here's classes, and you're gonna go starting this day." Um, and the program was like 8 weeks or something like that.
It's also a huge commitment. He did on you.
Yeah, yeah. It was one of those. Sometimes I was like, it's kind of like when you just give someone a dog and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
congrats. And you're like, wait, what? Now I gotta do this
Nice
thing?
analogy. Nice analogy.
So yeah, but really like that opened my mind up to being curious about something and learning how to do something. And I was just so invigorated. And I think he also understood that there was some part of my inner compass that was leaning towards creativity. So just needed a little bit of a boost to get there. And after that, like, I fell in love with making music, and every the moment I would get back from work, I just started focusing on that.
You
And
never published anything about music. I remember I've read that you were into music at one point, but I never listened to anything you produced. You didn't put anything online.
yeah, I mean, it's online. My music name is Trebles and Blues, so
Oh,
it's
oh
on
crap!
Spotify and all
Oh
that.
crap!
So it's all there.
Okay,
I mean, the last time,
I will devour it as soon as possible.
yeah, you can listen to it while you're thinking about your book. It might give you some ideas from.
Totally, totally.
So yeah, I did that for a while. I mean, I haven't made anything for a long time, but it was something that I knew at that time I wanted to try pursuing. Um, and then for reasons which also kind of make sense to our conversation here, I fell out of love with it after like 5, 6 years and wanted to do
Okay.
something different. So that's another example of how things shift and what it means to kind of pivot your attention to something that is more inherent to your interests.
So in the second chapter, you write, contentment is our default condition, but it is constantly disturbed by external pressures, either subtle or direct. If we are born with the attribute of presence, then anything that takes us away from it can't be a product of our own making. Any doubt or fears we have about ourselves are not created from within, but rather by an external force that has convinced us of its truth. This force is called conditioning, which is the source of all tension and suffering we feel. Um, Tell me more about conditioning.
Conditioning is an ever present force in our lives, whether we realize it or not. And it starts from the moment essentially we are born, and we have an inherent nature to look outward to regulate our inner state. So I mentioned this concept called social referencing, which when I first found out about it, I thought it was fascinating. And I've been able to see it in my own child too. And I'm sure you've seen it to a certain extent. But the concept is that whenever a baby is navigating the material world and he or she sees something that's uncertain, then they'll look back, particularly at their mother, to get a sense of her reaction.
If
And
she's anxious or not, yeah.
yeah, and if she's anxious, he'll proceed with caution. If she's not, then he'll just go onward. So this is this is kind of baked into the human condition. And you may think that this is an elementary example, but when it comes to success, prestige, approval, like these are all things that carry well into adulthood. And I think that at our baseline state, I didn't use the word happiness because happiness assumes these kinds of good vibes, good feelings, and these feelings of I feel like everything is great. But contentment is more of a plateau. And people tend to think plateau is like a derogatory thing, but you can have higher plateaus than others, right? And what I'm talking about is that the plateau of contentment, of feeling like you're here and feeling like you are not ruminating on the past or thinking of the future. Like this is the default condition of human beings when we're out in the world. But as conditioning and as norms and as we learn about the world and how things work and the game that you have to play in, then we start thinking of these rules and these scripts and these narratives that layer on top of all that. And that always creates the feeling of, okay, well, I should be doing that or I should be doing this. And you see that very early on in childhood too. I mean, Piaget has many, many examples of this he talks about in his work. But there is so many things that point to the fact that we look towards others to validate what we're doing ourselves.
But isn't something that, I mean, I of course agree that this might be toxic, but negating that there is any good in this, isn't it dangerous? Like we evolved as a social creatures. I mean, uh, having some herd behavior is part of our survival instinct. Uh, do you think there is any conditioning which is good to some extent?
I think what's good or not, yes, when it comes to your general survival instinct and you to learn about, okay, I need to navigate the world so I don't die and things of that nature. Yeah, you have to learn about that for sure. I think when I'm referring to conditioning that causes suffering, that is more about
Hmm.
when you have contextualized what people have said to help you, right? To
Hmm.
take in the advice of others that say, "Hey, if you do things a certain way, you'll be safe." The issue with that is that if you're not able to contextualize that properly in the form of understanding, it becomes suffering. And we tend to live our lives without having contextualized it ourselves, which is why we end up feeling like crap because you have so many layers of what people think you should do, even if it comes from good intentions. And
Yeah.
that's why I say that good intentions are not enough here. Like you have to if
Of course.
if you
Yeah.
don't live out those intentions, then they could be destructive.
Your parents might have a better idea of what a good life for you should be, but you human, your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
Later in the chapter, you say when you're suffering, you do so because you don't understand who you truly are. That's a very intense sentence, and then you go on and you say that essentially. Given that contentment can only be found within, the tendency to deny your intuition is the surest route to discontent. Those are strong words. I mean, sometimes, when I read it for the first time, I said, maybe this is an oversimplification. Can you elaborate a bit more on this relationship with the suffering and you don't understand you truly are?
Yeah. Um, I think that there has to be some exaggeration when it comes to statements like these, because if I were to say, well, it's the condition. Well, actually, in the next chapter, I do kind of refute that. But
Okay.
when I talk about conditioning being the source of all suffering and how denying yourself is the surest route to discontent, I do believe that you not paying adequate enough attention to wanting to delve into who you are is
Hmm.
probably one of the reasons why we can never be happy or content. Like the if my theory is that if you took enough time to study your own mind, and this is not you just sit in a cave and you meditate and you're away from the world. No.
Of
Knowing
course.
yourself is not an isolated pursuit. You have to do that while also being in harmony with the world. This is very important. And this is where I kind of fall away from the spirituality element of this is that
Yeah.
the hallmark of knowing yourself is to understand who you are while functioning in the world. And the interesting thing about especially today is that if you actually take adequate enough time to understand yourself, pay attention to where your curiosity and things are taking you, then you can also live according to the seams of the world and ride along those seams. But if you keep denying that, if you keep saying, "Well, nah, I just
Hmm.
can't do what I feel like I'm being pulled to do. I'm being drawn in to do because of X, Y, and Z reason," that you kind of manufacture based upon what you believe about the world. Then
Hmm.
you will always be left wondering what could have been, what should have been, what you could have done. And I think these questions are so prominently displayed in deathbed regrets. You see them all the time when people talk about that. They almost seem like tropes now, but they're super profound about people that just wish that they had more conviction. When you read any deathbed regret, everything, if you were to boil it all down, it just ties to I wish I had more conviction.
I wish I worked overtime more. Nobody say that.
No. And why is that, right? Why is that? Because when you I
Well, there
interpret
is
that
some
sentence.
survivorship bias, even though they are dying. But maybe somebody who who was more, let's say, driven by pleasure, they die differently. They're not the 90 years old dying on their deathbed. Maybe there is some survivorship bias in these studies on deathbed sentences. But anyway, I still agree with you. Nobody regrets certain things, that there is some clustering of things people regret, maybe spending more time with people they love or something like this.
And sometimes it makes me wonder if even the person that has spent the maximum possible amount of time with their kids are still going to have that same regret. Right? Right. You take the person that is at the way end of the bell curve in terms of max
Yes.
time spent, like at the end
So
of
if
his life,
they're
well,
still regretting that, maybe it's worth spending zero with your kids because it's the same. So I mean, yeah, I need some counterfactual study on that because it's usually very there's not a huge sample set, and that's usually not very scientific as a study. But yeah, let's suspend disbelief for a moment. I mean, what you're just saying about understanding who you truly are resonated with my idea of Socrates saying an unexamined life is not worth living or something like that.
yeah.
Since it's a sentence you've mentioned a few times on your blog, was it related to that or not?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Socrates said in terms of like his two-word imperative. He distilled all of
I
philosophy
mean,
into know yourself.
allegedly, because we don't know Socrates if.
Right, right. Through Plato's discussion of him. But yeah, essentially the imperative is to know yourself. And this is where I like to take a lot of work, a lot of things from this guy Krishnamurti, who to me was probably one of the most influential people I've read or listened to.
Okay.
Yeah, and he basically went around giving talks about kind of freeing yourself from society's clutches and things of that nature.
There's a lot
Uh,
of stuff on YouTube about Krishnamurti.
yeah,
A few
yeah, he's
talks.
great.
Yeah.
He's great. I mean, there's a lot of things I disagree with about him too, but I think that's what makes him great because he has things that I don't agree with, and it's fun to explore those areas. But one thing he does say is that if you, for example, if you envy someone, that's ultimately because you haven't done the work to look within, right? It's always an external, like, I want this, I want that. But if you try to understand yourself, he uses this phrase, whatever I am, that I want to understand. So, whatever I am, meaning that I don't know who I am. So much of who I am is built off of my genes, my upbringing, my parents, I had no say over. And it's kind of ridiculous to think that I know who I am when I'm kind of built off of this conditioning. But if you try to look through that and understand through all that, through all those layers, then you almost have no attentional space left to desire what someone else has because there's so many things that are intriguing or interesting about your own life. And I actually felt that while writing this book too, is that as I was writing
I,
it, all these
I
things
think that
surfacing.
that's true for somebody who has already lived a good life or a life rich of experiences. It's harder to say the same for like a teenager, no? I mean, it's easier for a teenager to envy somebody who has had a great life so far because they had not enough. You just say that if you look within, you will find a lot of things that you don't have any mental space left to envy somebody else. But you need to have something to look into. Maybe
Yeah.
if your life has been pretty standard or boring or whatnot, there's not much to look for. I have another objection. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah,
Just
I love it.
it seems that you are trying to define rules that are good for everybody, which is usually a bit of an exaggeration or some slight fallacy. But I've read a lot of studies about how happiness, even though it's hard to define, is 50% genetic. So sometimes you are born with a tendency to be sad or tendency to never be satisfied. I think in the genetic lottery I've been pretty unlucky because I usually think more about the things that I have not done yet or the places I've not been yet. So I feel that if you are born on the wrong side of the genetic lottery in terms of predisposition to happiness, it's really tough to overcome that. I was thinking about this, just I will connect with chapter 3, when you start talking about some of your chronic illness, that I discovered you suffering from tinnitus. Tinnitus. Is it that correct?
Yeah, I have
Yeah, I know
tinnitus.
the Italian. Yeah, I know the Italian word because there is a famous Italian singer who suffered from that. And first of all, you still suffer from it?
Yeah, I still have it to this day.
Okay, and I think that overcoming that, trying to find, trying to remove all external conditioning and be live your life with this problem or with some chronic problem, it's not it's not always possible if you are not on the right side of the genetic lottery.
Mm.
So I think that not everybody can overcome this. It's a bit, I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are genetically predisposed to depression and your I mean, I don't really think anyone's first immediate impulse is to reframe a situation.
Yeah,
Like when
exactly.
like when I had my tinnitus, when it first came out, it was I was just in a complete tailspin. Just
I
uh,
can imagine. Yeah.
yeah. So I was not thinking in week one, all right, how am I gonna rethink about this so like I can figure this out? No, there is this period where you're just essentially in
You
grief.
don't
You're
accept. You are in grief. Yes, you are the denial or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're kind of grieving what you once had, and I do think that yeah, maybe not everyone has the capacity to do so, but I do think there are more people than not that are kind of teetering on the edge, right? I think it's like people that actually do have the ability to do that if only the right story or the right push was there for them.
It's not easy. It's not easy to take that thread and try to stick with it because sometimes it's easier to let it go and say, "Oh fuck, I'm unlucky, whatnot." I'm saying this because I'm trying to to think what would happen if I get something which is very bad, like a terminal illness or something very bad happening to one of my daughters. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't think I'll be able to reframe it and move on. So that's why I'm playing devil's advocate because I think I will not be able, even though I've read through your book. I know all the work it takes to try to reframe things internally. But there is something which I don't think I will ever be able to overcome.
So what
That's
would
an
be the
addition of,
alternative
yeah.
here? Would you, if that were to happen, would you just be in a state of stasis and you don't make any movement in life? Or is it that you are making movement in life, but everything just lacks complete color? So you're still moving through the motions.
Probably the second one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I sometimes I do some thought experiment. Now, what would I do if tomorrow one of my daughters would die, for example, or if I discover that I have terminal cancer or something like this? And it's why the fuck should I think about this? But I do. But I do because I'm
Yeah.
done this way. I'll anticipate problems. But once you are not no more a single entity, but you are a family, or there are people who are relying on you, things become very complex. And I my first reaction to those who say that they have the magical formula is, nah, that doesn't work. Please help me.
Mm.
Convince me that there is a way.
But you know what's interesting, man, is that, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I also feel like you are driven by a sense of duty as well.
Oh, a
So,
lot. My life is just. I'm guilty all the time. If I'm working, I'm guilty that my family is alone at home and I should be there.
mm.
If I'm enjoying something, I'm guilty because I should be working. That's not a healthy situation. I know.
It's not a healthy situation, but it may prove useful. It may be an asset to you if something tragic happened, where if there was a situation where you lost a loved one, um, because you have other loved ones in your life. I don't think that
Okay.
you will just completely fall apart and
Sure.
lose
Sure.
all sense of duty. So I'm not saying that your life will be completely rosy and you have to just give it some time and it'll be rosy again. But I don't think that you will be in paralysis and you won't you actually like just literally won't be able to move on. Um, and I mean, granted, I think the tinnitus story is a kernel of this. In this, but the broader point I was making was that I think a lot of time after a certain impactful moment happens or some tragic thing happens, a big part of it is you just like wish you could be back to where you were before. Um, I think I realized that that was a big source of my pain was I just like wanted to go away. I just want to be returned to my baseline state. But you know what? An interesting thing I actually was started to do was when I had the tinnitus, maybe about a month or so in, and I would have a moment where, let's say, I actually was able to laugh with someone, or
Mm.
for a moment, I felt like things were like okay. It might be kind of brief, but I felt that. I actually made a note of it in my head. I was like, oh,
How long did it take from when you discover you have this condition? But by the way, since my most of my audience would be probably Italians, tinnitus is acufene, which is the condition where you always hear a noise in your head. It's like the one that Caparezza has, which is an Italian singer. Yeah,
mhm.
just an explanation to my Italian followers.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
helpful.
so you at one point you were able to laugh again. Did it take a lot of time since you discover you have this condition until you were able to move on with your life?
Yeah, I think, like, it took maybe a couple months,
Wow.
and yeah, like, you know what's really interesting, man, is that last year, some other things happened with my ears in last
Okay.
summer. So, the tinnitus first arose in December 2019, and then last year, I had more issues come up with my ears in terms of, noises and things like that, and that time I felt like all the work I did before kinda unraveled and I had to kind of restart, and that was really difficult. But once again, I kind of noticed, oh, all right, I'm with my family. So I was in Korea during this time. I'm with my parents. I'm with my loved ones. Like that. That one actually took maybe a few weeks to get back into things again.
Okay.
But the half life of the suffering, kind of decreased, and now it's like, oh, I'm able to continue onward still, and even like thrive. And I do feel like time does heal in that sense, but I do
Hmm.
think there are things we can make note of on a regular basis to try to decrease the half-life of that mental suffering from it. The question of can everyone do it? I don't know. I'm not sure, but I do think that people can feel a small sense of inspiration to try it out.
Sure. 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 Makes sense. So back to the. I mean, let's move on. I'm running through the chapters of your book because I loved it. So I want to ask you more questions. So in chapter four,
Yeah.
you have this hiking analogy.
Mm.
Uh, but at one point, you make a relationship between fear, conditioning, curiosity, and the desire for agency. That 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 match to the hiking analogy. Can you explain a bit what you mean by that?
So here's the hiking analogy is that imagine that you're on a hike and then you see a fork in the road. We've heard of this before. One one road is kind of well traveled, a lot of
Hmm.
footsteps, and then the other one is you feel like you could go on it. There's something there, but no footsteps, no nothing there. But you think there's something there. Now, the obvious question is, well, which one would you take and so forth. But I felt like there was a more interesting framing here, which is more so to do with if you were to revisit this a bunch of times, what would you do? So
That's very interesting. Yeah,
so
because
the
the first
synod
time it looks like explorations versus exploitation, which is a classical metaphor of like do more of the same or trying something new. No,
mhm.
but the first time is not exploration versus exploitation. The first time is both exploration. One is a path already. I mean, that is familiar with something not familiar. So I think the first time everybody would pick the familiar one, the first time.
Yes. Yeah.
But then after 10 times you go there, maybe you get you get you get pulled toward the unfamiliar path.
But most likely, you might still take the familiar path if it's 10 times because you still aren't drawn in so much to the point where you're going to take action on going towards the other path. But if you go there 100 times, well, first of all, there's a reason why you showed up there 100 times because you're just more and more curious about that other thing. And by the 100th time, you start not asking about the route, but you instead start asking about yourself. Like, why the hell can't I just go on it? What's going on here? You start to ask these questions. It's like, dude, if you're on the 100th time where you're asking about this book, then it's kind of like, all right,
So you
well,
want somebody to push you to the other path.
yeah, yeah. So there is like this relationship between kind of this repetition element and you becoming more familiar with the conundrum, with the dilemma. And as you become more familiar with that dilemma and more aware that it exists, you revisit it more. And then your fear of uncertainty starts to decrease as your desire to express your own agency or to figure out what lies on that other path increases.
So this is in the frame of getting to better know yourself, I assume.
It's this analogy is more so to show the relationship between uncertainty and conditioning. Like why we accept conditioning, why we choose to take it in, and why we
Because
live
it's the
according to
familiar
it.
path. It's the familiar path, no? People
Yeah, I
say,
mean
"Hey,
it's
study medicine. Don't become a rock star. So you won't make money. Just study medicine or become a lawyer." So you do that. It's the familiar path. But then
it's the
at one
familiar
point
path.
you will feel pulled to like you will feel like attracted by the unfamiliar path.
Yes, and the familiar path always you have a higher hit rate, essentially. Right. It's essentially a probability game. The things that we're conditioned to do have a higher hit rate for you to be okay, for you to feel that you'll be all right. Whereas the uncertain things, the hit rate is lower, and you feel like if I don't hit that, then I'm going to be destitute or broke or homeless or whatever.
Yeah, there is a famous post, then became maybe even a book, maybe, which is called the optionality trap.
Mm.
That essentially says that it is considered wise to always keep the most door opens, like you do something which has more options for the future, but then you will never get another rock star or another like a great artist that never took courage to go onto the pathless path. Like that's very it resonated with that absolutely. Then you in the following chapter you finally move into defining the intuition thing, which for me at the beginning I just said something that then you discuss on the chapter 6. So can you define what intuition is in your model?
Intuition is the inner wisdom that welcomes uncertainty. It is what takes you from the limits of rationality to the decision you ultimately make, right? I think that, we have these three things that are most important to us, right? Where you live, what you work on, who you're with. You might think for something this important, you write like a pros and cons list, and you're like, all right, where do I live here? Does the cost of living lower, or do I have kids? And you set it all up in spreadsheet.
No, you don't do that.
You might do that, but it could only take you so far. Like
Okay.
there's always a gap between your where you go for that and what you ultimately do.
Well, I have an answer for that. I don't know if you read the Designing Your Life book or if you saw the TED talk about this book or this practice in Stanford. There is a designing school at Stanford, and there is these two professors, Barnett and Evans, and they are teaching designing class. It's design thinking. They say that there are problems which are optimization problems and problems which are design problems. So optimization problems, they have a solution and you need to find the solution. While design problem, they don't have a solution because there is not a single solution. They're always different problems. Like, hey, should I take this job or should I quit? It's always like individual. There's no repetition. There's no samples you can run. So the way you approach those problems is a bit different. So sometimes, yes, of course, intuition plays a role, but there's also like prototyping or get to talk with people. There are other techniques. So that's why you don't solve these problems like who will you marry or which kind of job will you end up doing or where you live in a very rational way, because those are design problems. So you still need to find approaches to these problems which are not fully rational. But intuition plays a role. It's usually the final decisor, but how to gather options or how to experiment a little bit and go talk with people who have done the same thing or prototyping a bit. I don't know if you have read the book. That's an interesting book. It might be useful for you to merge your ideas with them. It's called Designing Your Life. That's an amazing book, one of the best books I've read in the last 5 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I hear intuition, this could be misunderstood for follow your gut feeling, which is not always a good idea. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that intuition needs to be tested by reality to earn its reliability. You have to make contact with the world multiple times to understand where you've gone right, where you've gone wrong. But it's actually these lessons that will make your intuition better. So you have to keep testing your intuition. And this is the importance of following your conviction at various points, because then you gather the data, you get what happens, and then you could course correct and then strengthen your intuition as a result. So yes, it's like follow your gut, but then do it iteratively to know where it's led you astray and where it's right. And I think maybe this is a good place to kind of introduce the metaphor
The inner compass.
of the compass. And the way I see it basically is that you have the compass itself, which kind of resembles your intuition, and you have the pointer of true north that is guiding you to where you feel conviction to move to. And then anywhere outside of true north is where you're kind of going to your conditioning. You're falling victim to where your conditioning has led you. Now, if you just kind of focus on the compass piece and you just follow that, then you could kind of end up falling off a cliff. So, right, you have to keep testing it. But I think from a metacognition standpoint that we talked about before, there's something else that's a part of this picture, which a lot of people neglect. And I think this is what I refer to as the magnet
The
of
magnet.
self-understanding that's actually on top, that is keeping your pointer north,
Yeah.
right? And this element of knowing who you are. And you mentioned before, like when you're young, when you're a teenager and so forth, like you don't have that because you don't have experience. You haven't had the experiences required to understand who you are better, right? So in that case, your magnet is tiny. It's super, super tiny. And I
So
view
the north is
conditioning,
unstable. Yeah.
it's always
You can.
unstable because conditioning are winds. I think of it as winds
Yes.
that are blowing it away. And if your magnet is small, then your pointer gets blown away really quickly. But the more you understand yourself and know yourself and have lived experience, then the magnet gets bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger, and it keeps your pointer pulled. So even if there's a ton of wind going on, your magnet doesn't move as your pointer doesn't move as much. So
How
it's
to
I think
grow your magnet? How do you know if your magnet is pointing to your true north, or you're getting misguided by false knowledge? Maybe you are doing bad experiences. Let's say you are part of a cult, so you grow up and then you get reinforced, and people all say that this is the only truth, and then your magnet is pointing, is making your true north not be your real true north.
Yeah, yeah, those are great questions, and that's what the second half is all about, is about how do you construct this magnet? I mean, because people focus too much on the compass, but what's really
Hmm.
important is the magnet and ensuring that it's aligned there. And the way I view constructing your magnet, I kind of view these 3 principles that govern it. And the principles I call are reflect, relate, and
Relate,
create.
create. Yeah.
So these 3 things are iterative, and reflection is really about that point we discussed earlier about what if you were to dig deeper behind all the layers of what you feel like other people or the world is putting on you. So in the case of if you're in a cult, people that are in a cult don't know that they're in a cult. They think that they're in the bubble of truth, and everyone else doesn't know. And this is where people like I don't know if you know Megan Phelps Roper. She was in the Westboro Baptist Church, which effectively is a cult, and she was able to get out of it. And her story is quite interesting to hear in terms of how she was able to escape that cult. And a lot of it has to do with this element of reflection and to question a lot of these narratives that other people in her community weren't questioning.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a great way to do that is through a practice of journaling,
Journaling.
but
Yeah.
journaling is different from a diary. And I think like this is where things get a little mixed up. Some people ask, what is the efficacy of journaling besides me sharing how I feel and all these like mushy things?
Sharing, not necessarily.
Well, sharing is, but it's that's more on the creativity stuff. If you
Sure.
journal, that's more so just like for your
For
own thing.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I make the distinction between a diary and a journal. Like a diary is when you're just talking about what you did, what you felt, and things of that nature. The journaling is about why you felt this way. So if you felt a
All
particular
right. Yeah.
tension from being in a certain scenario, why did you feel that way?
Hmm.
And you dig deeper and deeper that way, and you just write for yourself. It doesn't have to be coherent. It doesn't have to be all grandiose. Just do it for
I do
yourself.
that regularly. Yes, I know. I have like a routine, at least monthly or even more frequently, of writing. I call this piece of writing where I am. So where I am, and so I start like physically where I am now, then where I am in life, and then I jot down all the fears that I have. I do fear journaling. I know a lot of strategies, and that
Mhm.
helps a lot. Still, sometimes create more confusion than clarity. But I sometimes confusion is good, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna get something super clean and clear-headed. I mean, I journal every single day, and a lot of
Oh,
times after I'm done, I'm like, "All right, nothing happened." It's the same thing with, like, meditating. You don't
sure.
there's it's all a function of compounding, really. It's the more you do it, the more you just have, an idea of what you may be outside of all the layering, and writing really helps because you become a historian of your life, right? Like, that's what you're essentially doing when you're writing. Um, and that's why it's so powerful. And the next concept, which is to relate, which is extremely important
So
as well.
before we move on, so
Yeah.
reflect, relate, and create are the three ingredients to get to know better yourself. So that's the
Yes.
title. Okay. So
Yes.
relate.
Relate. Yeah. So relate starts with the statement that knowing yourself doesn't happen in isolation, right? Like the essentially relationship is a mirror. The way you view others will reflect the way you view yourself. And if you are navigating the world based upon, okay, well, I want to associate myself with this person because of their status, then you're going to use your own status to determine your self-worth. Like that's how you're going to view yourself. Conversely, if you are able to treat people with compassion, regardless of who they are, kindness, regardless of who they are, then you'll be able to be content with yourself, even when you are alone. So there is this fascinating thing that happens when you really start treating people the way you like to be treated yourself. I know this is an age-old, timeless piece of wisdom,
Sure.
but my whole thing here is to really emphasize what it is to look and view other people, how they are within the world and your proximity to it without the lens of status, especially. I think I think status is one of society's greatest poisons. And what we try to do though is that we try to treat it as a virtue and we try to justify it really. And there's many reasons why people will say we need status, and but it's ultimately comes down to an aggrandizement of self. It's a big statement, I know.
No, yeah, sure, sure. Status is a zero-sum game. If you want more status, somebody has to have less status. I also agree with you. It seems to be a concept that many don't understand, or they like to play status games. I don't know. I think it's connected to pleasure. I mean, having a higher status is more pleasurable in the short term. I think it's that, but I don't have a good model of why people chase statuses. I don't know. Um, by the way, have you ever thought how how your model would change when you are not alone? I mean, when you're more than yourself, like you have a family or other people relying on you, is the model identical, or do you think it would change?
Yeah, that's a good
Because you,
question.
because you put the individual at the center, but sometimes, I mean, if you are a family, some decisions are not only on you. Like, for example, I cannot decide, maybe I would be happier if we move to Italy. Well, there are other people which are which will be affected by my decisions. How would you
Yeah.
change your model? I mean, you're not alone. Uh, does your model change when you need to take into account other people's?
Yeah, I mean, I have a line in the book where I say life is a single player game, but meaning is derived on multiplayer mode. Um, and that is one of the great paradoxes too, is that you're in your head all the time. But the way that you will actually derive meaning from the way you live your life is when it connects with others. So a big part of it really is to identify who those others are. And I think keeping that really small so that that unit actually feels like a unit. So it doesn't feel like you're at constant odds, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
Um,
Your
so
children it's an easy, your family or your children, that's an def, easily definable unit.
yeah, and even maybe like a few friends or right, and even when it comes to friends, it's like actual friends.
Sure,
And
sure, sure. But I mean, I don't see many life-changing decisions that would impact too much my friends. But I see life-changing decisions if I feel at odds with what I'm doing, or where I'm living, or who I'm with, and my daughters will be impacted by every decision in this field. So if I
mhm,
decide that that my wife is not good for me, uh, but I have three daughters. If I decide that Switzerland is not the place where I want to live, but maybe Morocco would be better, I still have three daughters I need to take into account.
yeah,
Uh, if I decide that this job is not for me and I want to become a board game designer with like 95% of probabilities that I will make zero money,
mhm.
but I can be okay with myself, but I still have three daughters I need to care about. Do you think that when you're no more an individual, but you are essentially there are people depending on you, that strictly, not like a friend. A friend is okay, it's a friend, but it's never like a daughter.
Sure, sure.
How would you? How would you? I don't know. Uh, does the model change a bit?
Yeah, I mean, you may be in a situation where what you feel like is right and where you have conviction in is at odds with someone else that may be impacted by the consequences of that decision and want something else for themselves. And I think this is why I put relate in there. And I wanted to make it clear that you have to interface with the world meaning anything, everything that is outside of you. And you have to also understand what it means to compromise, but not compromise your integrity. I think that's a big thing. It's like if you just let's say if you just want to move because you're like, oh, the scenery is nice or something like that, and I just want that, then that is not like a decision based off of your integrity, really.
Okay.
But if you feel like, well, I want to, I don't know, like I want to be a board game designer or something like that, right? And you feel deep in your heart that you will regret it for the rest of your life if you never gave it
Okay.
a shot,
So there is a
right?
threshold that it's something. If something is really like something that would define you, you should be compromising less. So that's the.
I think that there is a spectrum of compromises that you can make, and a big part of it is driven by your inner compass and how strongly you feel like walking towards that true north. And
That's interesting. Yeah.
and it's like your true north doesn't have to just be localized to you, right? Because your magnet is also built off of others as well, your interaction with others.
I
So
like that model. Yeah.
so there is a harmony there where you have every decision you want to make flows outwards, and that also anchors your own decisions you make as well, where they feel like it's your true north still. It doesn't feel like, I'm doing this because like my wife wants me to, or I'm not doing it because my daughter wants me to. It will actually feel like I'm not doing it because it feels right not to do it altogether. Like there's this kind of unity of understanding. And that happens a lot when you know what you want and you know yourself and you know what the compromises will feel like, and you could embrace those compromises with ease. And I do feel like that only happens when you not just are more compassionate, but also you know yourself better. You know what your constraints are. You know what your limitations are, and you know where you feel like it's worth it to push back and try to expand those constraints at different points of your life. We all have seasons.
Yeah. The problem might be. I'm trying to relate with my own experience. The problem is like the boiling frog, where it's a metaphor from, I think, Noam Chomsky, that if you take a frog, you put it into water, which is cold, the frog is okay. Then if you raise the temperature, the frog will get cooked without even realizing that she's getting cooked. So it means that small changes will bring you toward unimaginable places maybe you don't want, but there's never a jump long enough that you will realize, hey, I'm doing something different. Might be slightly moving into. It's like if your magnet is rotating a bit and then your true north is moving slowly. So the problem is, I don't remember why I started this metaphor. I think I wanted to say that if in my situation, for example, you feel that you're doing something which you slightly over time it's moving away from your mission or from your
Mm.
true north, but there's never a single step you can identify that's the moment where you oops went off the path. So
Mm.
it's hard to justify a U-turn or something like I'm going off-road now. I'm gonna make a huge change. If yesterday it was almost fine. So
Right.
I don't know if I mean, it's a path-dependent problem. It's not like at one point you realize you are being conditioned too much, but it's a daily process of slow, small conditioning in one direction, and then at one point you realize, hey, when did I move in that direction? I don't remember.
Yeah, and
So
yeah, I think there's no obvious threshold where you were aligned and then now you're not aligned,
yeah,
right? It kind of like gradually gets there, and then
which is
you.
different from the example like at the beginning of the book, for example, when you say, I was working in finance, but I knew that I was not in debt, and I was gradually being pushed towards something else, which means that my magnet was getting bigger. I used to get, I mean, I started to get to know myself better. Here, the problem is different. Is when you think you're doing something, and then you slowly move somewhere else. and
Mm.
then you don't trust your inner compass anymore. How can you recalibrate your inner compass?
Yeah, I mean, this aligns
It's
with, like, I think why I started writing this, and then also when you mentioned in the beginning that, you've been doing the YouTube thing for 4.5 years, and you're like, "Okay, well, am I like, this is where you feel like, or like, if 4.5 years ago Georgia was like, all right, this is what it became, you'd be like, hell yeah, this is my
yes,
inner
of
compass,
course.
right? And
But the
then,
same was like 10 years ago. If somebody told me, hey, in 5 years you'll be a Google engineer, I say, oh, fuck, yes, I'm super happy. But
yeah,
then, then something changed. So I don't trust my inner compass anymore. I don't know if I really know what I want. Sometimes I philosophize that maybe nobody knows what they really want. They just want what they think they want. Because you have your, if yourself, the same person was like clean their memory and then brought somewhere else in the world, they grow up and met other people and met other hobbies or other things, maybe you become a cricket player or you don't know.
mhm.
So do we really have an inner compass, or it's just a result of the experiences we, and then when they change, when you get new experience, you you don't even know what you are.
So I think a cool thought
So
experiment to run here is, like, let's say you could look at portions
I'm a
of your.
hard case. I know that I'm a hard case.
I love it. This is why I love talking to you. When I hit you up, I was like, I want to, like, run through this because I know you're gonna have great retorts and make me really think about this. But okay, even in the context of your life, where it's like you have these 5-year chunks, like, okay, 5-year Google engineer, 5 year as Mr. Rip, and okay, and then what happens next? So the question is, like, during these 5 years, do you even think that you were following your inner compass, or you were just wanting what you think you should want? And I think a
Good
good thought
question.
experiment to do here is that, like, during these 5-year increments, if you look at it kind of on average, like, do you think that you were a better person to the people that matter in your life during these periods of time as a result of what you were doing? So in my case,
Okay.
when I was doing music, I think in the beginning maybe I felt that way, and then a couple years in, I started to, like, drink more. I started
Okay.
to be around people that I didn't really enjoy being around that much, but I thought I needed to
Okay.
advance my music career. And towards the end, like, I was not being the best partner to my wife.
Okay.
Um,
So you use the relate metric to measure if you're doing good. If you're okay.
I think so. I think that's a good way of understanding if you are, if what you felt like you thought you wanted is actually what is aligned. And you see this time and time again with people that pursue massive amounts of wealth, for example, right? It's almost become a trope of some nature where it's like, well, but maybe they're not the best husbands or best wives or whatever. And a lot of that is because, like, somewhere along the way, the compass got misaligned, and you're actually not, maybe you're being a quote unquote better person from your own criteria of what it means to be that, which is to make more money. But in actuality, you're missing that relate part of the framework, which is why I think
I
it's so important to have in there.
Yeah, I usually, let's say that I use the create metrics more to measure the quality of what I'm doing. And by create, I don't mean like money, but I mean like measurable artifacts. Like what have I done good for the world? Like am I have I inspired people? So the output. So that's usually my measure of how I am still on track, and this is still my mission, more than the relate. But that's a good point. I mean, the using the relate metric to measure how you're doing, that's great. We didn't discuss about the create. So what's your recipe for create?
Yeah, I think create is such an important part of knowing yourself because it's the best way to express your agency. Is the best way to put out what you feel like is directionally aligned with your interests and curiosities. And to do that, so you could almost create a ripple effect. You don't know what could happen as a result, right? And this is why it's different from reflect. Reflect is very internal. It's just focusing on yourself and even writing for yourself. But create is about kind of dissolving the boundary between you and the other and allowing your expression of agency to share what you've learned. And that's why I say when it comes to creating, it's not about just like if you're a painter, you create, because it all depends on why you paint, right? If you're a painter, let's say because your mom is a famous painter and she expects you to carry on the family name, it's not an act of creativity anymore. It's just a job, or
I agree totally. Yeah.
So I think when you're able to express what you feel like you've learned about the world and do it through a concrete way, and also in a way where you want to get better, like that's a big thing too. However you want to define that better. Now, here's where it gets tricky though, is that if it better becomes about how you gain more status, how you gain, more eyeballs and things of that nature, then it will turn into a form of conditioning. and
Okay,
and you
clear.
will pay attention to people that you may not have paid attention to 5 years ago. Like that's one thing that I've kind of found fascinating too, is that when I was first starting out, like all I was paying attention to was like great writers and people that I just love to read and enjoy because they inspired me. And then now I'm like, wait, I'm paying attention to some like business guru that I never would have paid attention to in the beginning. And and I'm like, and this guy, I don't even really
Why?
agree too much with his values, but because he's dispensing useful quote unquote information about building a business, I'm paying attention to him.
Sure.
But then I'm just like, wait, okay, so that's another sign of like, all right,
Okay.
I'm not really doing the mastery thing right now. I'm like pursuing status. Um,
When you talk about create, it's always externally facing. So it must be something that the world can see and judge, or can also be an activity for yourself.
I think it can be an activity for yourself, but that falls more into the reflect area. I think there is something powerful about sharing what you've done,
Getting feedback. Yeah.
getting feedback, and
It's easy to slip into the conditioning territory.
absolutely. It's so much of that, and especially if your creative thing, you want to build it into a business, and because there's a fundamental tension there of doing it for yourself and providing value to others that you're going to now venture into, right? And that's, I don't really discuss that in the book because otherwise it'd be 200 pages instead of 100. So
Which
so
I would have loved, because this part is more actionable part. The last six chapters on relate, create, and reflect. I wanted more, but yeah,
yeah, I
the
mean,
inner compass that just remind our listeners.
yeah, I can't believe that it's up there like that. But yeah, I mean, when I see people that are creating and putting their ideas out, it makes me feel like they have tried to make an effort to know themselves better as well, right? It's like, because if you didn't have any curiosity for this craft, you wouldn't do it to begin with. Like, it's people by default have followed their curiosity to do what they're doing. Um, and if you
You
want to commit,
attach. Do you
yeah.
do you do you connect curiosity and creativity together? Because when I discuss what are my values, I usually express in different categories curiosity and creativity. Curiosity brings me to learn more, so to get curious about the world and get to learn, explore, and find things, and learn about things. My curiosity get attracted, while creativity is another thing which makes me produce artifacts. They're usually
Mhm.
connected, but not that strictly. Well, you put curiosity and creativity in the same bucket, apparently.
Well, can you create without knowing what to create? Like, the things that you decide to create are based upon what you've learned.
That's interesting. Well, I know a lot of people who lack curiosity but still create things which are probably lower quality. That's why I think they're both important. But
Mhm.
you don't. I mean, I have few friends who write musics, but they write the same music over and over again. They're not that creative. because they lack curiosity, in my opinion. And there's also true in other aspects, for example. But yes, for me, those are like interlinked concepts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're very interlinked because curiosity tells you it tells you where you want to direct your agency toward, and then it also keeps you on that path.
Well, I think
And
you can be curious without being that creative if you want, if you are on a learning journey, but you cannot be creative without being curious. Uh, uh,
yes,
that's.
that's a great way to put it. I agree with that. Yeah.
Uh, I have one last big question, then we can conclude. Uh, I've been an avid consumer of your old blog posts, like I've read all of them. Which ones do you think this book goes against? Or more generally, is there some, I mean, the process of defining a comprehensive model of reality or against suffering or like the inner compass, is there anything you've published so far that now it feels obsolete or plainly wrong to you?
Plainly wrong.
Some old conviction or old blog post that you say, it doesn't resonate with me anymore, even though it may be still very successful or very popular.
Hmm. That's
Because for, I
interesting.
mean, I love to I love to make models which are bigger. So first thing I would do if I had you for one day here, I would say, okay, now we run through all you've written so far, all your blog posts, and you tell me how they relate to this book.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, I can see, I can see how I don't know your blog posts about envy or those about money relate to this book. Is that something that you feel like this post that doesn't, it's not me anymore? Oh, the answer
Hmm.
may be no.
Yeah, I've just like I'm trying to catalog what I've even written because I've put so much out there. Um, I think these are all snapshots of my thinking at a given time. And I think when it comes to this book, though, the thing that may have the most odds, it's probably something I've written that emphasizes the importance of, yeah, external validation in some sense. But I'm not quite sure what that may be. I have this impulse where like I actually want to start writing more about building creative businesses and so forth because I do think that it is an important part of like what I've done and what I feel like is important, and it also exercises that relates component of my model. And when I think about delving into that space, there's some fear there because so much of it is marked by charlatans and people that essentially are operating like I
Okay, so
just want
you
to make
fear
money.
you fear to being classified as a fake guru or something like this.
It's not about the classification, but it's more about like, am I actually being useful in that regard? Like, am I giving a particular framework on this that could actually translate into tangible results for people, right? And I
Did you
think
run
like
through the
that's
same process for your storytelling course or not?
Yeah,
Or
well,
you
for the
knew that you
storytelling
were.
course, like I don't say I'm going to help you build a business or I'm going to grow your audience. Like these are not promises that I make. But it
Sure.
does fall under the general realm of like, yeah, you could build an audience with the things that you do, with what you learn from here, and people have done that. With some of the methods, which has been really heartening to see. But a lot of other people are like, well, I took this thing and now I'm starting to write my own book that I only want to share with 5 to 10 people. And there's been people in that category.
Okay.
So I find both of them really fascinating and interesting. But if I do something off of like building a business, then there may be something more like, well, I have to make my first dollar based upon what Lawrence is sharing and so forth. And making
So
that
you
kind of
feel
promise.
more responsibility or the risk of somebody being, I don't know, less satisfied.
Kind of, yeah. Like I kind of,
So
but I do think
reputational
there's an
risks.
angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but I do think that there's an angle here where it's like I can tie in the inner compass stuff with it. Like some sort of business that is modeled off of what your inner compass is directing you towards. And then maybe there's like the philosophy element of that. And then there's also how do you kind of exercise that through a more tactical approach. But I don't necessarily have to promise like you will get this reward or that reward. It's more of
Sure.
the mindset shift that comes from knowing that you can build something that is tied in with a sense of integrity. I think I like I was actually thinking about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger the other day, and I don't think that it's the fact that they've made billions of dollars why people love them so much. I mean, that's a big component of it. If they didn't make a lot of money, maybe people wouldn't care about their what they think about life. But I think a big part of it is also people really respect their character, and the way that they live
Integrity.
their lives.
Integrity. Yeah.
Integrity, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like I want to kind of take some of that model and imbue it here because I think that it is an optimistic view of the world fundamentally that not everyone is just driven by if I follow this person, I'm going to be able to make X amount of money. But maybe I can make it in some portion of it,
I
but do it in a
I
way that
don't
aligns
think
with me.
I don't think your audience would expect. I mean, I don't think anybody would eventually buy a course of this kind in your audience, expecting that they're gonna make billions of money out of it. They know what to expect. I assume it's hard to complain. I think it's hard to get false expectations. I mean, you are not the charlatan with the Lamborghini and cash money, cash bills on the Lamborghini. So I think you should not be scared of like giving false promises because you will not. So
Mm, mm. Yeah. No, that's a helpful frame, and it's just it's like one of those polls I've been having where I feel like there could be something fruitful here, just like, not even professionally but personally, and it's about yeah, what would it mean to just like take the step to do that? So yeah, I feel like sometimes you could be locked in or you feel like I've published certain things that say this and say that, and then now I want to move in a certain direction that may be counter to that. But at the same time, I think everything is linked. Like you have to go through different phases to move on to other phases, and you still see yourself in a lot of them. Maybe you don't agree with everything anymore, but they all led to this next thing that you're doing now. Like
sure.
you were a blogger first, right? Like
Yes,
you
yes,
wrote.
sure, sure. Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
if I reread something that I wrote 10 years ago, sometimes I say, "Oh wow, I believed that. Now I don't believe that anymore." So that it's hard. My the volatility of what I think is too high. So that's not good. Well, sometimes it's good because I change fields and I get attracted from like different things. Now I want to build board games, for example, which it was not even in my mind 10 years ago. So I like that.
Mm.
But sometimes, yes, I mean, somebody says that if you don't get embarrassed by rereading what you were thinking 10 years ago, you've made no progresses. So you
Yeah.
should be a bit. That's
Yeah.
too much. You should feel like when you read your journal entries of 5 years ago, you should feel like, oh, who's this asshole? What's this kid? Because you
Yeah.
grew up. Uh,
There's a lot of
but
stuff on my
if
personal Medium page where I read and I'm like, oh, I cringe so hard.
well,
And
there should be a balance. If you cringe about 100% what you wrote last week, you are a mess. But if you agree with 100% of what you wrote 10 years ago, you are static. You're static. You're not changing. So
mm,
there should be some mix of growing and consolidating what you think. I
mm,
guess.
yeah, no, that's a powerful model to look at it and a good way to gauge progress.
Yeah, I'm in this metacognition mode where I track how much I change ideas over time to see how reliable is my current
Hmm.
view of the world. That's also about politics. I mean, or I have a conviction. I mean, I think that this person is good, but then I change my mind, and every um, how's it called? I'm not talking about Elon Musk. I'm not talking about Elon Musk. Every reference to existing people. I mean, that's why I challenge the magnet in the inner compass so much, because sometimes the more I discover what I think and who I am, the more it keeps changing. It's like the
Mhm.
Heisenberg principles of like you cannot measure who you are and where are you heading to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just philosophical ranting. So,
Well, I'll say this to that is that I really think that this reflect, relate, create, there is no endpoint. Like the journey of self understanding has no endpoint, and it's because of that very dynamic is um, because if you do have like some sense of humility and you are able to see that things do change and things evolve, then every step forward is yet another opportunity for reflection, which brings us back to where we all begin. And you're kind of constantly going through that. Now your modes of creative expression may change, as you're well aware of. The ways in which you want to
mm,
interface with the world may change. The way that you reflect may change. But the fact that you're still doing it is really important, right? You're gonna
yeah,
always be
sure,
in relationship with others, and
sure.
so I don't view it as a liability. This notion of,
Okay.
oh, is my magnet set there or not? Like the purpose of the magnet really is like to keep you alive, like to keep you more so on the journey still, that you still want to do this. You still want to commit to understanding yourself better, to knowing who you are through these principles and so forth. That's what the magnet is there for. It's not to keep you just on this one path for forever.
Yeah, yeah. Now I can see there is a, I don't know if it's an Italian philosopher. I think I don't remember its name. It's Peano. I don't remember. Which says that like the utopia is like the horizon. The more you walk, the more it goes behind the horizon. It's like you want to reach the horizon, then you will never reach it. But in the meantime, you are walking, you are moving. So that's
Mm,
why that's something similar. Well,
mhm.
Lawrence, thank you so much. It's been a very nice evening discussing to you. I'm happy to meet you again. I hope we won't let another 5 year, 4 year pass between our next chat. Let's remind our listener about the Inner Compass, the new book that Lawrence Yo has been publishing this month in July 2025. The Inner Compass. Cultivated the courage to trust yourself. Where can they find the book?
So it's going to be on Amazon. That's where all the I'm gonna direct all everyone's attention
Okay.
to get the book. So it'll be up there. It'll be on
So
all
you
formats too on release date.
you will probably
Ebook,
find
physical,
a
audiobook.
link in the description with the book.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you so much, Giorgio. This has been a real
It's been
treat
a
to talk to you
pleasure.
again. I had a feeling we would run the 2 hours or so, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah, okay. I hope everybody enjoyed this chat, this conversation, and buy your copy of the Inner Compass today. There's a limited edition. If you don't buy now, know that we are entering in the charlatans space.
On cue.
Bye bye.
All right, bye.